Hello, everyone. Welcome to the August 2014 Professor Messer A+ Live Study Group. I love putting these study groups together. I've taken all of the questions you've sent me throughout the month, and I've put them into some interesting Q&A things that we will be doing today. We have a lot to go through. I've got a lot of interesting information. I've got things that might save you some money when you're ready to take your A+ or really any of your CompTIA exams. I've also got a website from Microsoft that will give you lab versions of every Windows operating system that you will need so that you can download it, have it ready to run in a virtual system, and be able to use any aspect of Windows absolutely free. So I've talked about this, but of course in the past we've talked about needing your own installation media. Now you don't. So I'll be talking all about those things when we get to it. Before we get really going with this, I want to remind you that all of my videos are available absolutely free out on the internet. We do this study group really as a thank you. You not only support the site by going and watching the videos, you subscribe to the YouTube channel. A number of you purchase this offline version so that maybe you're not online, or you'd like to have these available that you can watch in high definition locally on your local computer or on your gaming systems. And people tell me they watch them on their PlayStation. You can watch them on your Xbox One. It's a DVD-ROM with MP4 files. You can transfer it to your mobile devices. There's a lot going on there. In the second half of this, the second hour, I will be taking phone calls. So I have the call numbers available here. You can call in also from the numbers that are on professormesser.com/live. And since we do these live, you're welcome to join in and watch what goes on behind the scenes. We do my pre-show is me trying to get things together, and the post-show is usually us taking phone calls with these other pieces. There is quite a bit going on, Professor Messer. If you'd like to keep up with what's going on, I'm putting new videos out on YouTube, it seems, every day right now because the brand new Security Plus course is being posted there. So there's a lot of videos going on there. What am I going to do next? Who knows? And the only way to know is if you subscribe to YouTube at professormesser.com/YouTube. If you'd like to also, I mentioned saving money. If you're ready to take your exam and you would like to get a 10% discount off the top on any voucher or as many vouchers as you would like to purchase from the CompTIA store, you can go to professormesser.com/vouchers. Why pay retail? I have a 10% discount just waiting for you there. There is quite a bit also that I'll throw out on Twitter. If you'd like to get our daily pop quiz Twitter, really the best way to get it. I do also provide that on YouTube, although with YouTube, they won't necessarily show it to you every day. That's the little sneaky thing they do over at YouTube because they want me to give them money to show it to you. So Twitter's really your best bet. Or just come to the Professor Messer website every day. I have the entire archive there. There's a button at the top. You can hit a button and it will take you to a random A+ question. Those are kind of fun too. If you are watching this live, by the way, on professormesser.com, down at the bottom of the screen is a chat for the live A+ study group. I will be looking at that chat, referencing that chat, talking to some of you folks. So if you have questions for me or things you're not too sure about, that's a great place to do that. There is also, since you're watching this live or maybe even watching the replay, you can get continuing education credits for this from CompTIA. I think, according to their criteria, you can. You obviously just can't watch all of the study groups and have every CEU you might need. They do cap it at a certain number. I think there are 4 total CEUs you can gain by watching an industry event, seminar, workshop, podcast, webinar, or conference. And obviously you need much more than 4 CEUs to renew your A+, but this might help. So give you a little something throughout the presentation today. I will give you a secret code word for you to email to me. And then if you do that, I will send you an email certification that you did indeed watch this. I mentioned that a lot of people will take my videos offline. If you're interested in having these downloadable videos, you can go to professormesser.com/downloadable-A+. There's also links all over the website to purchase those as well. Also, you may notice that all my videos are closed captioned on YouTube. These are a human closed caption. They're not the YouTube automatic closed caption, which occasionally can be quite humorous. But these are real people that sat down, watched my videos, and they were able to see the text on the screen. And even though these aren't technologists, they're able to do a fantastic job with these transcripts. If anybody ever needs transcripts done, you just let me know. I've got a great service to do that. They even automatically post them back to YouTube. It's amazing. And I take the closed captions, I put them in the videos. They're also in these videos that you would take offline as well. One of the things I like to do in this study group, and I think a format that's really worked well for us, is the first hour, we'll do some Q&A. I'll throw some questions out, and you get to answer the questions. And I like to make this interactive. I like to make it so that you can not only participate, but you can see other people participating as well. There is a service provided that will allow us to do this. It is called Socrative. And if you go out to Socrative.com and go to the room name, you log in or connect as a student. You don't have to put your real name if you don't want to. You can add the room name Professor Messer, all one word, and it will take you to the room where I will put up questions for you to be able to see. In fact, some of you, I'll bet, are already there. And if you are, you will right now, before I even talk about it, get the very first question that I am going to send out. So I'm going to click that button. So if you are at Socrative and you are in the Professor Messer room, you will be able to answer the question before I even get to it on the slides. And you only have to go to one place. You just stay there right on that page, and it keeps bringing the questions to you. You don't have to go through separate URLs or do something special. I really like the service. It's been pretty well since we've been using it. They also have an app you can download if you would much rather have it on your mobile device or just have it as something that's easy to start up. It's on Google Play. It's on the App Store. It's on the Windows Store. They have something for every possible service. So that's kind of nice to have that there as well. The Socrative is something we're going to use in this entire first hour. So if you're on the fence, you're wondering, should I do this or not? Absolutely. Go out there and put it in there. And a good example of this is the next question. So how long have you been studying for your A+ certification? And I have on my screen, I can see what the results are of this that you're typing in. In fact, I'll show you what I see. So here's the room name that I see, and I can see less than 3 months, 3 to 6 months, 6 to 9 months, more than 9 months, or I already have my A+ certification. And as you are voting, it is interactively moving on my screen right here. I'm able to see exactly what people are answering. We can see 39% of you less than 3 months, 12 of you 3 to 6, 18% 6 to 9, 12% more than 9 months, 17% of you right now already have your A+ certification. So that's kind of nice to have that perspective. Not only are some of you already studying hard and at the very beginnings, indeed, usually 3 to 6 months tends to be a bit of an average for people to study for their A+. But like me, some of you take a lot more than 9 months, or you're here to watch this for CEUs or just to participate or see if you remember any of these things, because I'm going to ask these questions of you as we go through. I do see the student names at the end of this. So if you put in your name, I would see exactly how you scored, because I get a report at the end that says, here's what everybody did. You don't have to use your real name. I'm not really tracking this. And I delete all that information and reset it for the next month anyway. So that's fine. That's exactly how things should work there. I think that's a good way to go about doing that. And then we'll play around with some of these questions as we go. We've got quite a bit to go through. As we are looking at the A+, especially those of you that are just now getting into using or working with A+ materials and looking at the exam objectives, and you're planning to take the exam, one thing you should be aware of is, of course, there are 2 exams that you have to take and pass to get your A+ certification. These can be taken in any order. There's no specific time frame between them. You just have to be sure you take both of them before the exams are retired and an updated version of the exams is created. So usually about every 3 years or so, CompTIA will come out with an updated version of the A+ exam, and they'll change the numbers. So you want to be sure that if you're taking your 801, that you take your 802 before the 802 is retired. Right now, it's probably about a year, maybe even a little less. We'll probably hear more about that at the end of the calendar year. But when CompTIA announces a new version, there's usually about 6 months of an overlap where you can take both exams. So don't feel right now that a new exam is coming and I'm just going to wait, because you might be waiting 6 months. And then after that, you could have taken the existing exam another 6 months after that. So you've got plenty of time to work with that. There's plenty that you can right now sit down, study for the exam, and with a 6-month ramp, I think anybody would be able to walk in and take that exam. So don't worry about that piece. The 801 exam has these topics on it: PC hardware, networking, laptops, printers, and operational procedures. You have to get a 675 on a scale of 900. Makes no sense, but that's how you do it. There's a 100 to 900 scale. And the way we believe this works is that every question is worth a different number of points, and you have to have that accumulate up to 675 points to be able to pass this on that scale. A little weird, isn't it? But that's the way it's done. Very common to see this on a number of these types of exams, whether it's from CompTIA or Microsoft or Cisco or whoever. The 802 exam, operating system, security, mobile devices, and troubleshooting. You have to get a 700 out of 900 there. You have to know a little bit more on the 802 exam to be able to pass that one. So all of these topics you can see are very well separated in the A+ exam, which is great. You can kind of study for one exam, get that under your belt, and then go study for another exam. It used to be the A+ exam, there was a lot of overlap. Now there's relatively little overlap between these exams. So it makes it a lot easier, I think, for us to be able to study and then take the exam. Before we start getting into questions, and maybe you're at the point where you've studied for your A+ certification, you've read the books, you've watched the videos, and now you'd like kind of a last-minute study sheet, a study guide. I have one for you. This is the Professor Messer A+ study guide. I've taken all the notes from all my videos, and I've put them into PDF documents. You can find these PDF documents for $10 and download these documents that have all of this information you might want to see for the A+ exam. These literally would take weeks to put together for each one of these, because I took all of the information for every single one of my exams and put it all on there. Really has quite a bit. In fact, let me show you one. I'll show you the 801 study guide. And I have this out. One nice thing about this study guide is that it does have this on my website. You're able to have a look at a lot of the information that's there. So if you're trying to figure out, how do I study now that I've taken this, taken the book, I've read the book, I've looked at all the videos, look at all this information that's in here. So these PDFs, these go on and on. It's a 9-page study guide for the 801, and you've got another one for the 802 that's just a little bit bigger. I think it's about 12 pages. So I've got all the pictures in there. I've got everything. Every penny of this goes back to the website. It helps support the hosting, keeps things going on ProfessorMesser.com. I want to thank everyone who has purchased these already. This goes an exceptionally long way to keeping things running and helps support what we do here at Professor Messer. This is something you could find at ProfessorMesser.com/A+SG. All one word, APLUSSG for that piece. So just something to keep in mind as we go through this. Now, let's see what our questions are today. I've got a number of things that we are going to talk about to go through. This is the questions that I said are going to be available in Socrative. So have these available. Remember, no answering in the chat room. You have to answer in Socrative. So I'm going to go to the next question on my screen. I have to remember what buttons I have to push, because the question is, which of these utilities would be, you can kind of see it with my big head there above it, which one of these utilities would be the best choice to help you increase the read and write time of files to a traditional hard drive? And you have a number of options available to you. You have check disk, defrag, NT backup, and format. Which one of these would be the best choice? You often get questions on the A+ exam that talk about the best choice, and you have to choose from the options that are there. A lot of people feel that it's more of a tricky question. That's a trick question they've thrown at you. But the question itself has a very clear best answer. If you're ever looking at one of these that says, what is the best choice, one of them should always jump out at you. The CompTIA exam is not vague. It's very specific. I don't really feel that any of the questions are trick questions. They're not here to trip you up. If you know the material, you will know the answer to this when they ask it of you. So it's very, very useful there. For those of you asking about the The study guides, they are PDF study guides. They're downloadable study guides. I don't even send you anything physical. As soon as you purchase the study guide, you can download it immediately. So that's kind of nice to have that there. Some people will print them out. They'll laminate them themselves, or they'll put them on their mobile devices. You can absolutely do that. It's not a protected PDF. It's not digital rights managed, because digital rights management doesn't work so much. So why bother? Instead of playing whack-a-mole, I'm just going to make the PDF available to you, and then you can put it on all of your devices and have them studying when you need them. That's one of the important parts of this. So our question is, which of these utilities would be the best choice to help you increase the read and write time of files to the hard drive? And let's see how we did. We look at the answers on our Socrative, on check disk. 10% of you said, yeah, that's check disk to be able to do that. We had 79% of you said defrag, 3% of you said NT backup, and 9% said format. Well, that would really increase the amount of speed to files, because you'd be deleting everything on the drive. Indeed, as it appears on this screen, B was the correct response with defrag. The disk defragmenter, especially on moving hard drives, is the thing that really will help speed things up. As files are saved to your hard drive, especially larger files, they are put wherever there happens to be room. So it'll split the file up into smaller pieces and scatter it around to what happens to be available on the drive. Well, if the drive is spinning around and there's a single head that is not moving as the drive is spinning under it, it now has to, whenever you retrieve that file, has to go all over the drive to now get all of the pieces of that file together and then provide it to you. So to prevent that method where we have to go all over the drive, we want the files to be in one piece, in one place. We want them to be contiguous. And that contiguous file means that the drive can simply spin, the head stays in one place, it reads all of the file, and then provides that to you. It's a much faster way of writing and reading information to a moving drive. With an SSD, obviously, you're not going to have to worry about that, because you've got SSDs are all memory. There's no moving parts. And generally, you do not use the defrag on an SSD. Windows is pretty good. It recognizes there's an SSD there, and it says, no, we're not going to be doing anything that would do additional writes to that drive, because it's an SSD. We don't have to worry about that piece. The read and write times can sometimes be dramatically different. Now, if you're defragging every week, you're just running it automatically. In fact, some of the automated things in Windows may just run your defragmentation every week. And if it does that, you may not even notice that there is any type of improvement. I had an older machine where I had not defragmented the drive in quite some time. I ran a defragmentation, which took a long time because it has to move files around and make extra room and then move files back into the extra room. There's a lot back and forth and back and forth. The ability to do that, though, once I finished and rebooted the machine, I instantly saw a difference. Some people will they'll run the defrag and they'll go, well, how much can this really help? And I guess there's an argument to be made about the speed of files and how big they are and how fast your drive is. There's so many different variables, but certainly it optimizes things when you're talking about defragmentation. So very useful. And of course, on this question, defrag was the very, very best way to be able to do that. The ability to look at drives is important. So let's look at another question that we have on this view on our Socrative. So if you're going to Socrative, you can have a look at this as well. And we're talking about drives again. We had just done the 802 question dealing with defrag. Now let's go back to 801. And on the 801 side, there's a question about putting in partitioning. In fact, you could also apply this to 802 during the Windows installation process. What's the maximum number of partitions that you can have on a disk with the MBR partition type? The different partition types can be a bit of a challenge trying to determine what partition type we're using. There's a number of different kinds. The kind that we've traditionally used, the one that goes back years and years and years, is this MBR, the Master Boot Record Partition type. There's a global unique identifier type, a GUID type of identifier that we don't go into really at all in the A+ certification. Currently, everything is really focused on the MBR partition type. They'll probably be updating that since more and more of us are able to do that and work with it on those pieces. There is a lot that we can look at on partitions and being able to use them. And if you're going to be putting or separating out a drive into different pieces, it's important to know how many of these partitions can I put these on a single MBR partition type. And we're really talking about, in this case, primary partitions. So this is the piece that I think as you're installing Windows comes up the most. I'll have people even talk in the chat where I'm installing Windows, I'm getting a message that says, where should I put this? Should I build out a new partition? Should I resize partitions? Should I have it somewhere else? There's quite a bit there to be able to work with. So let's see what you said with this particular question. Since about 60 of you have said this, and we got quite a mixture. We've got one partition. We can do 16% of you said that. 14% of you said 2 partitions. 58% of you said 4. 5 said 6, and 8% said 8. I think the largest number, 58%, 59% said 4. But is it really this disk partitioning type is the thing that we really want to know more about? These partitions can be really, really useful, help you organize things. Some people will create one partition for an operating system and a completely different partition for data. Or you may want to install multiple operating systems on the same physical drive, and you may want to separate these out into separate partitions to be able to do that. If you look at an MBR style disk, it will have up to 4 partitions. So those primary partitions will be 4. If you are using that GUID style, the global unique identifier, 128 partitions you can put on a single drive. That can be really useful on these really large virtualized machines, but for most of us, we don't have to worry about that. I think I'm even running on some of my Windows machines the MBR style, but what you see as an end user doesn't change whether you're looking at an MBR partition or a GUID partition. Really, we're talking about underneath the surface and how the operating system writes to these particular drives. Now, when we're talking about partitioning, I want to be very clear. This is not something you should simply go into your machine and start toying around with in your disk manager. If you do start doing anything with partitions, there's a real opportunity for you to lose data. So make sure that if you are planning to add a partition, you're planning to resize a partition, you're planning to move things around with partitions on your computer, always, 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 always have a backup. It's always an important thing to have that. That way, if something does go wrong during that partitioning process, you will be able to now recover from that. All of your data will still be safe. So very important to have that there. We're moving right along now. So let's go to another question. I think we've got another one in the hopper here. Let's move over to the networking side. I got a lot of questions you guys sent in the last month about networking, being able to have these things networked up. So this question's regarding remote desktop. And when we deal with networking and security and firewalls and port numbers, we have to know and memorize a lot of these port numbers in our computer. So let's look at the remote desktop protocol then and how it communicates. This is an application that allows you to communicate to other devices using this remote desktop piece. So the question I have for you is, what port does it use? Obviously, we need to know these port numbers to be able to configure our firewalls, to be able to configure personal firewalls in our Windows machine. Maybe we'd like somebody to connect to us using this remote desktop. We'll need to open a port for them. What port would they be opening? I've got a lot of options for you. You've got port 3889. I've got TCP port 389, TCP port 3989, TCP port 3389, and TCP port 399. It's one of those. There's a lot of 3s and 9s and 8s in this view. Could be darn near anything. This is a lot of people say, why do I have to memorize port numbers? And this is really kind of those rote memorization things that you have to know for the A+ exam. And I understand that if you're just getting into the A+ exam and you're just starting along the lines of trying to learn all these things, it can be a bit overwhelming to memorize all of these separate port numbers. But after a while, when you start working with your firewalls, you start working with applications on the network, you do some external firewall work, or just become accustomed to configuring these applications, the port numbers become very second nature. You don't even have to think about memorizing them anymore because they're just top of mind. So don't think that you're memorizing these for the sake of memorization. These are actually very useful things, and you will use them as you do anything with technology in the future. Well, let's see how we've done with this particular question. So we've got, I threw these numbers in and then I jumbled them all up in an effort to really see if you really knew what the answers were. And we have quite a mix here. 14% of you said it was TCP port 3889. Some of you said it was TCP port 389. 6% of you did. 10% of you said TCP port 3989. 68% of you I did not fool. It is TCP port 3389. And then 2% of you weren't fooled at all, or everybody but the 2%. TCP port 399, which I kind of threw there at the end. That doesn't even sound like a real one, does it? These are the well-known port numbers. These are the port numbers you would expect to have on these devices when you're using them. There's quite a few well-known port numbers you will need to know for the A+ exam. And the TCP ports that you see here are the ones that are most important. These are the only ones that are listed in the CompTIA A+ exam objectives. So if you're trying to figure out what you should really focus on, just focus on these. There is quite a bit that you would need to know. Obviously, there's a big page of TCP ports there, and there's even a UDP port 53 for DNS that we have to know as well. But I've seen books where they just list out every port number known to man, it seems. You don't have to know this huge swath of port numbers. You only have to know these. Now, it's entirely possible, and CompTIA tells you in the exam objectives, that they could ask you for something that's not in the exam objectives. They reserve that right. But they don't generally do that. They usually stick right to the exam objectives. So if you know these, you'll be fine. You won't have to worry so much about the other questions that we're working with. So this is going pretty well so far. I think things are moving right along. Let's get another question asked of you. Sort of moving off into the 802 exam right now. And the question is that you need to gather long-term statistics from one of your Windows database servers. And it might be any type of statistics, CPU, disk space, it might be disk usage. You'd like to have at least a month of data to review. Which of these would be the best choice for this requirement? And I've got a number of options for you. It might be Performance Monitor, it might be Event Viewer, it might be Task Manager, it might be Windows Reporter, or it might be Services. There's a lot of places to get metrics in the Windows operating system. There's a lot of places to get metrics from. And in fact, some of these answers on here, a lot of these answers on here will give you metrics. But I've obviously asked you for a very specific case here to be able to do this. This is very important to be able to know when to use these tools. There will be cases where someone will come up to you and say, we really think we're hitting a CPU spike on this server. We don't know what's doing it, and it's happening early in the morning. It might be related to backups. We need to look at the entire day. Take and give me an entire day's worth of statistics on CPU on this server so that we can then examine it and look at it over time. That's the real key with this, to be able to do that piece. There is a number of places to look at and go to in Windows. So make sure you read these questions carefully and try to get an understanding of what the business case is and what someone's trying to accomplish when these questions are being asked. Also keep in mind these questions are a bit they're each one taken individually. You should not read extra things into the questions, and you should not take something from a previous question and think that that applies to this question as well. Some of the questions you will have are very useful to be able to really go through that piece. Let's see how you did. We've got quite a number of folks that have answered, and we can see that 38% of you said Performance Monitor, 49% have said Event Viewer, 3% said Task Manager, 10% said Windows Reporter, and 1% said Services. And the answer in this particular case was Performance Monitor. So in fact, there was more people said Event Viewer on this one. Why would it not be Event Viewer? I would think I'm looking at events on this machine. I'd want to view those events. It makes perfect sense. In fact, Event Viewer has that nice little set of graphs that you could see over time on certain statistics like network performance. And I can see CPU utilization of what's happening right now. But of course, this question was talking not only about the metrics that you would be gathering in Performance Monitor, and even if you want to set alerts and alarms, Performance Monitor allows you to do this. But the important part of this question was, I wanted to collect this data over a relatively long period of time. I wanted to set this up, come back in a day, and see what's there. And Performance Monitor allows you to do that. You can store these statistics over a very long period of time, and that way you can have it write to a file. Later on, you just pull the file and be able to see what the results are for that. You load it back into Performance Monitor. It will graph all of them out for you. You'd be able to go to any point of time during the day and look at it. Event Viewer does have some great tools in it to be able to get a real-time view of what's going on. I can see network utilization right now, and it's even got a tiny little graph there that shows me utilization over a shorter time frame. I can look at CPU utilization on an app, but again, it shows it over a short time frame that is not designed for long-term views of data. So this is one of those cases where Performance Monitor would actually be the better tool to use for doing long-term views of this data and what's available there. Well, let's do some more. We've gotten through a number of these questions. I've got one more here. Well, I've got quite a few more here, actually. We're making very good time on this. So let's look at what's next on these. And it is, which of these operating systems can be upgraded directly to Windows 7 Professional with an in-place upgrade? You know, upgrading Windows is an important part of the 802 exam, and you need to know what operating systems can be upgraded and to what can they be upgraded. So there's different editions of Windows. So you not only need to know the main family of Windows that can be upgraded, but some of the editions in a family can't be upgraded to another edition in another family. That's quite a bit to be able to work out in your head. But there is actually some very logical flows that you can think about when these questions come up. Let's take a sip of coffee here and get this question here. So which of these operating systems can be upgraded directly to Windows 7 Professional with an in-place upgrade? I got a lot of upgrade questions this week. In fact, somebody said I'm going from XP and I want to go to Windows 8. And I want to use the Windows Easy Transfer, which we've demonstrated in previous study groups. Unfortunately, the Windows Easy Transfer in Windows 8 only goes back as far as Windows Vista, maybe 7. Maybe it does go to Vista, but it doesn't go back to XP. So you can't go Windows Easy Transfer to XP to 8. Now, I realize Windows 8 is not on the CompTIA exam. We don't have to know Windows 8 yet. They could add it at any time. We don't know. They might not. We just don't know. But currently it is not on the CompTIA exam. Somebody was just asking this kind of off the cuff to see what options they would have available. And if you're going from Windows XP to Windows 8, just install the applications yourself, transfer the files over yourself. It's going to be more of a manual migration to be able to do that. So let's see how we did. Let's see what you said on this. Oh, we got a good mix here of what people said. I like these questions. I feel like you never learn something unless you are fixing something that's broke or you get something wrong. I think that's a good opportunity to actually learn the answer. And I try to give you questions that you really have to think about. There's multiple steps. So in this one, which of these operating systems can be upgraded directly to Windows 7 Professional with an in-place upgrade? Now remember that upgrading to Windows 7 has a number of things that are required. So let's look at those requirements. First, 24% of you said Windows XP Professional, 38% of you said Windows Vista Business, 25% of you said Windows Vista Enterprise, and 13% of you said Windows XP Professional x64. So what's the answer? How do you get there from here? Well, there's a number of things to keep in mind with the upgrade paths for Windows 7. And one thing to keep in mind is there's no way to go from Windows XP to Windows 7 in an in-place upgrade. You can't do it. You can't pop in a Windows 7 DVD installation and run it and have it simply install Windows 7 with all of your Windows XP settings intact. It simply doesn't do it. There's no way to make that happen. Microsoft never created an upgrade path to be able to do that. If you are really, really into upgrading and you want to do an in-place upgrade, you wouldn't need to go from Windows XP to Windows Vista and then Windows Vista to Windows 7. It would be a two-step process to be able to make that happen, which just sounds painful because it probably is. So notice that from Windows XP to Windows 7, you got to install every single time. There's no option to do anything else. So the folks in that question we asked before, I had Windows XP Professional, Windows XP Professional 64. Sorry, it wasn't either of those. So as you're looking at this question on your exam, if this comes up, Just keep in mind, XP to 7 can't be done. Nope, can't do that. Sorry. Let's look at some other options here. I said Windows Vista Business. So Windows Vista Business to Windows 7 Professional can be upgraded, an in-place upgrade where you simply slide in the Windows 7 installation media and install it from there. The other option you had was Windows Vista Enterprise. Notice Windows Vista Enterprise, I can't upgrade to Windows 7 Professional. Wait, I thought you said I could go from Vista to 7. You can, but you can only go to the version or the edition that you're currently using. You can't go to a smaller or lesser edition. So if you have Windows Vista Enterprise, I can't do an in-place upgrade to any of the lesser editions of Windows 7. If I've got Windows Vista Enterprise, I got to go to Windows 7 Enterprise. There's no other option. If I'm going from Windows Vista Ultimate, I can only go to Windows 7 Ultimate. I can't go to Windows 7 Professional. Windows Vista Business is the professional version of Windows Vista. They kind of changed the nomenclature between Vista and 7. And that's why you can go to Windows 7 Professional if you have Windows Vista Business. Notice that if you wanted to go from Windows Vista Business to Windows 7 Ultimate, you can go to a higher edition. You can't go backwards. So as you're thinking about the deployment and installing these installations, that's what it is. And Windows Vista Home Basic can obviously upgrade to Home Basic. Notice Home Basic is the only time where you do have some options available because the home versions of Windows Vista will go to either home version of Windows 7. You can group the home versions together as far as upgrades are concerned. So quite a bit to look at there. And there's a lot in this matrix. It seems like that's a lot to have to memorize. But if you just keep some of those big rules in your head, you should be just fine with that. Well, I also want to make everyone aware that the folks at GTS Learning, who I've worked with for a very long time, great folks, great tools. They have fantastic CompTIA A+, Security Plus, Network Plus, Microsoft, Cisco. They got tons of training materials. The ones that I work with on with me and them is the A+ materials. They have quite a bit available, and one of the tools they have available is called Freestyle. This Freestyle product of theirs includes their entire ebook online. So you can go and read the entire book online on their Freestyle front end. They've also got a lot of information for testing. They've got some sample tests there that you can go through. They've got quizzes at the end of every chapter. And what they've also done is integrate my videos into that. So if you're watching a chapter on memory, my videos will be right there. So you can read the book section and then you can watch the video on that. And they also have Kindle versions of their books as well with QR codes. So you can read that part of the book and then grab your mobile device, grab the QR code and watch the video that's associated with that. But they also have live labs. There is a lot of questions about performance-based questions on the exams. And if you're working on your 802 exam, you know, it's operating systems that you really have to worry about. There is a need to be able to create labs in our environment. And I think the GTS Learning Labs allow us really to go through and build it out in a virtual infrastructure. Let's show you what it looks like. I'm going to bring it up on my screen so you can get a view of how these work. If you ever want to try these, they're available to try out on the website. You can run it for an hour and try it out yourself. The labs themselves, I'm in the A+ lab right here. Quite a bit that you could look at and go through. You can see, in fact, there's system administration. Here's user account management, disk management, file management, application management. Let's click on that one and it'll bring me up and show me the set of labs on the right side of the screen. Even shows me how they're laid out. I could pop this out and look at it larger, and you can go through each one of these. They even have screenshots that take you right through the views. On the left side of the screen are the machines. So I've got a domain controller, a Windows 7, and an XP device, and I can simply power each one of them on as if they were real machines sitting in front of me, and those machines now start booting up. So not only do they have the labs available, it's all out in the cloud. I don't have to have any hardware locally. I can run it in a browser just as I'm running here. I'm running in Firefox. You can run in Chrome. You can run in anything. This will even run either in a Java, or I can click this over. I'll run it on HTML5, which means I don't even have to install any additional software on my machine. All I need is a browser to be able to do this. And you can see the Windows 7 machine is now started up. I click on it. It's going to establish the connection. Here I am in Windows 7, that fast. I'll click on Start. We'll click on Control Panel. And you can see it's just as responsive as using a local machine. I can review my computer status. There's information about my machine. And you can then step through the lab without having to have any virtualization. I don't need any extra hardware on my side. I don't need more memory. I don't have to do anything. Very, very useful tool. And they've got labs for every part of the 802 exam. And as I mentioned, they've got some free things that you could use for an hour. So try them out yourself. Go to professormesser.com/freestyle labs, all one word, and you can try it yourself. If you love it after the hour and you said, I need to use this to study for my exam, there's a special price that's less expensive than going directly to the GTS Learning website. So use this special URL to get the discount, professormesser.com/freestyle labs, and it's $99 to have access to the lab for a year. So just another great tool that the folks at GTS Learning make available. A lot of people have used it who have tried this through the years. Maybe you should try it too. See if it's for you. It's absolutely free to try out. And you can determine, do I want to run this locally? Do I want to have labs already built for me? And you'll be able to make the decision on your own. So let's go back to the questions. Let's now go through some more of these. And the question that I have, let's move you to the next. If you're watching or following along, of course, don't answer in the chat rooms. And of course, if you're just getting here, you may want to follow along with us online and go to the Socrative website at socrative.com. The room name is Professor Messer, and you can answer the question as well, which is, your customer has just upgraded the operating system on their laptop. They're now complaining the information on the screen is blurry. The other operating system wasn't like this. Now it's blurry. What is the most likely cause of this issue? Has the video driver not been properly installed? Is the new operating system not designed for laptop displays? Is the laptop backlight faulty? Or is the Windows Device Manager, has it disabled the LCD display? You've got some options with these pieces to try to optimize how an LCD screen is going to look. That's really what this question is asking about. And of course, if you're installing new operating systems, you're changing something with hardware, and somebody's then complaining the screen is blurry, you will be the one who now has to fix that. So what would the best approach be for solving this kind of problem? And of course, I'm asking the most likely cause. Again, the CompT exam expects you to pick out of all of these things, more than one, in fact, may be something that would help fix this type of problem, but they're asking for what's the most likely cause. Well, many of these things could be the cause, but which is the most likely? And as I mentioned, it should really jump out at you to know what the most likely kind is to be able to do that. So let's see what the results are with this one. I'm going to go right to the results because I don't think I fooled too many people here. 89% of you said, yeah, your video driver's messed up. It's either not properly installed, it's not set to the optimal resolution for an LCD. We'll talk about that. Nobody said that the new operating system, well, nope, I hooked somebody. 1% of you said the new operating system not designed for laptop displays. 5% said the backlight is faulty, and 11% said Windows Device Manager has disabled the LCD display. Well, obviously, we're going to go with A on this one. There's not really much to worry about here. All operating systems are effectively designed for laptop displays, or else we wouldn't be able to run any type of laptops on our computers. Every OS is going to be able to use that. And if the display was disabled in Windows Device Manager, you wouldn't see anything on the screen. Blurry would not be your biggest problem. Not seeing it would be your biggest problem, being able to work with that. The laptop backlight being faulty would mean that you would not be able to see it very clearly at all. It would be extremely dim. In fact, most people would look at it and say the screen was black. You would have to look very closely to see if there was anything actually being put into the pixels of the LCD, because there would be no light behind it that would allow us to see that. So it's really not the backlight as being the problem either. So let's talk about that in a moment, because if you work with these things, you've probably seen this before. It looks just like this. What a mess, where you bring up the resolution, or you bring up the laptop display, and the resolution is not optimized for this display, which means that it now has to extrapolate what it should fit into, and it doesn't look as crisp as it should be. So these letters that you can even see on the screen here, some are kind of fat, some are kind of thin. It's had to make some adjustments to what the native resolution is. Now, if you have a 1-to-1, if you have an LCD display that is 1280 by 720, and you set your resolution in the operating system to 1280 by 720, it will be crystal clear. So if you make it something else, it may have to squish the letters and everything around, and that usually comes out looking a little bit blurry to be able to work with those things. So that's one of those nice pieces on that to work with that LCD video. You should really work on optimizing what the resolution is. Sometimes you can even do a multiple of the resolution. So you may be able to go to a 720p resolution on a 1080p view, but because it is a multiple of that, it may look crystal clear to you. It just may look a little bit bigger. So you may have to play around with some of the settings to get it to work exactly the way you'd like, but almost always related to the driver configuration. And if you've got the wrong video driver or it's using the default video driver, that could absolutely be the problem. And between the 4 examples you have here, that was the most likely problem that you would run into with this particular case. Everybody who answered A, 81% of you, would be absolutely right. All right, let's go to our next question, which is, which of these situations would you be most likely to modify the configuration of your BIOS? Would it be used to modify the default video resolution? Would you be disabling USB ports? Would you be adding a new disk partition? Or would you be preventing the installation of new applications? One of these things would absolutely be the one you would use if you ever want to make a configuration in your BIOS to accomplish these. So have a look at that, go through those specific examples and see if you can do that. Don't answer in the chat room. You can certainly go to the Socrative.com website. You can put in the room name of Professor Messer, and you should be able to help answer that with us. Okay. Let's see how we're doing here with the questions. A lot of you have already gone in and said, let's see what I need to configure BIOS. We don't often configure our BIOS. We're not usually going in and making changes to the BIOS. Generally, it works or it doesn't work. You would almost never do upgrades to the BIOS. Even if there are new versions of the BIOS that come out, doesn't necessarily mean that you would gain anything by doing those upgrades. Unless you're someone like me, if there's an upgrade, I have to install it. I must. Something compels me to install BIOS upgrades. It's usually a bad idea to do that unless you have a specific reason to do that. And very often it's hard to roll back to a previous version of the BIOS. That's one of those things that really creates a bit of a problem when working with those. So which situation would it be most likely to modify? Let's see what you folks said. So modify the default video resolutions. Those aren't done in the BIOS, so it would not be the 5% that answered A. 82% of you really got the right answer, which is disable the USB ports. 8% said add a new disk partition. You wouldn't add or change disk partitions in the BIOS, generally speaking. There are some RAID BIOS configurations that do allow you to do that, but we're talking about the most likely situation here. Again, going back to the case where there may be multiple answers, but only one of these is the most likely to be able to do that. There is also the prevention of the installation of new applications has nothing to do. The operating system has nothing to do with the BIOS. So it would not be D as well. B is your correct answer when you're working with the BIOS. So if you've done that, that's a good job in that. There is a number of things you can do with the BIOS. But instead of working and looking at the BIOS piece, let's shift gears a little bit and talk more about connectors. This is a part of the exam that just drives people crazy. It's all these different connectors and connections and cables and things that you have to know for the exam. It's almost even worse on the Network Plus, almost. You don't really get any of them on the Security Plus. So if you ever get that far, you don't have to worry about it. But I'm now asking you about a very specific connector called the F connector. What type of cabling is associated with an F connector? And it's either fiber, unshielded twisted pair, coaxial, or shielded twisted pair. You've got a couple of options to be able to work with. Again, no answering in the chat room. And of course, you've got a number of things that you could answer. If you go to Socrative.com, go to the Professor Messer room, all one word, and you can answer there as well. There's a lot of connectors. My A+ study guide goes through these. Do I still have that study guide up? Did I get rid of it? It's on my screen here. I can show you. I don't want to show you the connectors until we're done, though. That would prevent everything we'll do. But I'll show you one of them though that's got that's got some of these on here. So here's a good example of some of the things that are in the study guide: twisted pair, unshielded twisted pair. There's IP addressing information, ports and protocols. We were talking earlier, all those ports and protocols, they're in the study guide. So you've got something to go with whenever you start working with that study guide. So our question about F connectors, what was the right answer? And I was, yes, tricky. I kind of tricked you on this one because the first answer here was fiber. Fiber starts with F. So, of course, it's fiber. No, it isn't, actually. 24% of you said fiber. The F connector, actually not fiber. Again, this is what we've done to ourselves with technology, isn't it? We've named things and then don't abbreviate them in the right way. How about unshielded twisted pair? Nope, not that. It's not any type of twisted pair. In fact, it is coaxial. It's coax cable that would be using an F connector. All right, what in the world are you talking about, F connector? So which of these is an F connector then? Well, it's these. It's if you've ever worked with cable television or you've got a cable modem, the connector that's on there that you're screwing in, that is an F connector. So that is, whenever you start working and understanding in the A+, what all these different network interface type connections are, that's what we're talking about. There are a number of different connectors for fiber. None of them is called the F connector, however. Sorry about that. Don't you hate that? You were so close on that one. All right, let's try another one. We'll bounce back. For those of you that are watching this for CEU credits, I always ask during these study groups for you to send me an email. You go to Professor Messer website. At the top is a Contact Us link, and just send me an email that has the secret word of the event so that I can be assured at least you've watched up to this point. And the secret word in this particular one is F connector. So this is your chance to get at least one of the 4 CEU credits that you can accumulate by watching an hour-long live event. Just send me that email. I'll reply back to you sometime in the next week or so with an email certification that says, yes, you must have watched this because you sent me an email with the word F connector in it. Got another question for you. Which RAID type would you use to stripe data across multiple drives, including parity data? And there's quite a few RAID connectors or RAID types that you would have to know to do this. Again, no answering in the chat room to be able to do that. There is RAID is obviously one of those things that you're asked about, and you do need to know about it. If you're building a server, it's going to have RAID. I've got a disk array that's in my office right here. I don't think you can see it. It's sort of below my laptop here. I've got racks of equipment on both sides of me, and I've got a network attached storage in here that's running a RAID array. So it's really useful to know what type of RAID I would want to use in that, because there are advantages and disadvantages to every single one of those RAID types. There's only one RAID type that's used to stripe across multiple drives and includes parity data along with it. Again, the important part of these questions is to get the very specific answer. You don't want to read too much into the question. You want to look at everything they provide you in the question and look at this question as its own individual entity. Unless there are some certification exams from other manufacturers will ask you a series of questions that are all based on one particular view of a network, for instance. CompTIA doesn't do that. Every question tends to be its own, at least the multiple choice questions tend to be in their own little world. There's performance-based questions that are a completely different thing, but the multiple choice questions are all independent, individual questions that will be asked of you, at least for the moment. They could change this at any time. You never know where things might go with this. So let's see what our answer was with this one. What RAID type would you use to stripe data across multiple drives, including parity data? And we've got 6% of you said RAID 0, 9% said RAID 1, 15% said RAID 0, RAID 1 plus 0, but the bulk of you, 70% of you said RAID 5. And that would indeed be the correct answer on this one. Very quickly, I'll run you through the differences with these RAID types. If you were thinking RAID 0, RAID 0 certainly gives you some advantages. It's certainly striping is there. So if you saw the word stripe, you said, RAID 0. You'd be half correct, because I said stripe across multiple drives with parity data, including parity data. RAID 0 doesn't include any parity. There's no redundancy here. If you lose a drive, you lose all the data. It's really there for performance. RAID 1 is mirroring, where we are literally duplicating the equipment or the data across both pieces of equipment, across both drives. So there's no parity here. It's exact duplicates. We're not striping because we're putting exactly the same information on both drives. I did say RAID 5 striping with parity. There's the answer to what we were doing, where you are putting a little bit of data on every drive, and on the last drive, we're putting some parity data. So that is the RAID 5 configuration. Now there's also, on your A+ exam, you have to know RAID 1 plus 0. You may also see it called RAID 0 plus 1. You may also see it called RAID 10. And in this particular case, you are striping data, but you're striping it across mirrored drives. So it's really combining RAID 0 and RAID 1 and sticking it together and being able to use that. So some good things to use with those pieces. RAID can be a very, very useful thing. So you need to know which one's going to work for you, and then perhaps even think about which one has advantages and disadvantages from what I'm using here. And of course, being able to stripe. Our answer here, stripe with parity, is RAID 5. The 68% of you that said RAID 5 would be absolutely correct. Okay, we're getting down to one of the final questions that we have available to you. The question is dealing with IPv6. Got a lot of IPv6 questions this week. And so the question is, which of these IPv6 addresses would be a complete abbreviation of the IPv6 address that we have here? 2001, ODB8, 0000, blah, 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 blah. You see the whole thing listed. There's a big set of numbers listed there. And so the question that you have in this would be, which one of these is the abbreviation to that? Well, you guys are already answering. It's not even on the stream yet, but you see it pop up in the Socrative app or on the Socrative browser, and you're already answering in here. And this is usually a multiple step that you have to go through to abbreviate these. After you do about 3 or 4 of them, it almost becomes automatic. So look at the abbreviations and try to figure out, how can I abbreviate this with IP version 6? What process should I go through? What steps should I go through to do this? In fact, it might be good because obviously you can see the question in Socrative. So let's see first what people answered. Actually, only 17. I'm going to give you a few more seconds. This one's a little bit harder. It's a couple steps to go through and be able to do this one. There's a little bit more that you have to do for this question. You might be asked an IPv6 abbreviation question on your exam. This would certainly help you also on the Network Plus exam as well. There's not a lot of IPv6 question on the Security Plus, so really A Plus and Network Plus would be the places where you see the most IPv6 with this piece. So let's see what you folks have said. About 54 of you have voted now. So 12% of you said A, 33% of you said B, 16% said C, and 40% said D. You're all over the place on this one. So let's step through it. This is actually very easy to be able to step through and see this. So let's take the IPv6 address that I gave you. Yep, I fit the whole thing on there, even without my head being in the way. So this is the one I asked you about with this latest question. If you say this looks like your IPv6 video, it does have the same format, but I took the IPv6 address that I gave you in this question and we've moved it over here. So hopefully I got it right. Let's see if I did. There are, to abbreviate, one of the first things that you do on the abbreviation is you get rid of any of the groups that might have leading zeros in them. So if we look at this, there's no leading zero in 2001. The zeros are in the middle. And I'm not talking about zeros on the end either. I'm only talking about zeros at the beginning, the leading zeros. So 0DB8 would be a good one to get rid of the leading zero there, get rid of all the leading zeros in the groups. There's no leading, those are zeros that come afterwards. 0042, obviously the 2 leading zeros at the end. Just get rid of all those leading zeros. The next step with this would then be to abbreviate groups of zeros. Any place where you just have a zero or a group of zero, if you have more than 2 of these, you can, or really 2 or more of these. Let me speak very specifically there. If you have 2 or more groups of zeros in a row, you can abbreviate them by putting a double colon in. Now, if we look at ours, we can see that we have 1, 2, 3 zeros in a row. Let's get rid of all of those 3 zeros and replace them with a double colon. So now we've kept everything else. Everything else stays exactly the same as it was on each side, but I've taken all 3 of those zeros and put double colons in. If there were only 2 of those, I would abbreviate 2 of them. If there were 4 of them or 5 of them, it doesn't matter how many there are, you would abbreviate the entire group of them with double colons. You can only do this double colon abbreviation one time in this particular address. So if this had a group of 2 on one side of the address and a group of 2 on the other side of the address, you have to pick one of them to abbreviate. You would not abbreviate both of them with double colons because then you wouldn't know how many was in a group. See what I mean? So that's an important one to consider as well, which now means that if we take this entire piece and look at it, here's the results. So we put it all together, and the answer 2001, that one didn't abbreviate at all, DB8 : FF00428329, which means that the folks that gave me the answers here on D, 2001 DB8 FF00, double colons FF00428329, 35% of you that said D would be absolutely correct. Well done with that one. This is one of those cases where you really got to sit through and go through each step along the way. But fortunately, it's not hard. The rules to be able to abbreviate are not hard with this to be able to work through these. So don't worry that you missed that one, because as I mentioned, being able to miss certain exams or certain questions on these sample exams don't cost you anything in the real certification. In fact, you're learning something. So I've got a few questions that you have sent me over the month that really are not specific to the exam, but they talk about the exam. Not exam questions, but questions about the exam. I'm not even sure I make sense anymore. The question from Tony is, how long would it take to go through this course to be prepared to take the A+ certification exam? It's a good question because there's a lot in the A+. I think I mentioned earlier that generally the average is somewhere between 3 and 6 months to be able to study everything. And obviously, the more experience you have, the lesser amount of time that it will take for you to be able to study those things. One of the best things you can do is go out to the CompTIA website and download the exam objectives. These exam objectives have everything you need to know in them. There's nothing else in here that you would ever have to worry about with exam objectives. It has, if you know everything on the exam objectives, you're ready to take the exam. It's a great checklist to be able to do that. And very useful if you're trying to determine, am I ready to go in and take this exam? Let's go through this one by one and see if I really know everything. And sometimes something will pop up and you realize, I didn't study that. Let me now go back and study, and I can check that off of my list. You can download this from the CompTIA website. Just do the Googly search for CompTIA A+ exam objectives. You can also go to professormesser.com/objectives. It's asked so much, I just made a link, professormesser.com/objectives, and it redirects you over to the proper page on the CompTIA website so that you can get to them very, very, very quickly. And plus the URL for CompTIA is so long. Don't worry about it. Just type in professormesser.com/objectives and you will be fine. So very useful to have that there. I have something for you to answer for me. This is a fill in the blank for your Socrative, which is, what A+ topic would you like me to cover next time? And that's the one that I can at least get feedback from you on what you would like to be able to use or be able to see on these exams. I mentioned earlier in the presentation as we were starting that there is a website from Microsoft where you can download VMs, virtual machines from Microsoft for Windows XP, Windows Vista, Windows 7, and Windows 8. Although from the A+ perspective, we don't have to worry so much about the Windows 8 piece. But this website has an amazing amount of virtual machines already there. It's not really for the A+ exam, however. This is something called modern.ie. And somebody's just passing this along in the chat room during the month, and I wrote this down. I should have written down who provided this, because this is a great resource. It's really made for developers who need to test their applications in multiple versions of operating systems using multiple versions of Internet Explorer. And I checked through the license use of this, and it's for personal use. As long as you don't use this as your Windows desktop, you're licensed to use it. As long as you don't have multiple versions, you're not making multiple copies, you're not activating them. These are not activated versions of Windows. This is a really nice site because everything is already done for you. So this says select your what you would go to if you went to modern.ie. It takes you to a main page. Choose the purple box for virtual machines, and you can then, it says select your operating system, whether you're running Windows, Mac, or Linux. I'm running Mac, but if you run Windows, notice it gives you a list of all of the different virtualization applications you might be using. If you're using Hyper-V, if you're using Virtual PC, if you're using VirtualBox, if you're using VMware Player. VirtualBox and VMware Player and Virtual PC for Windows 7, all free. Really, Hyper-V is sort of free too, although you have to have Windows Server to be able to run that. Those are free applications. So if I'm running VirtualBox on Windows, notice it pops up all of the downloads, Windows 8.1, Windows 8, Windows 7, and all the different IEs for Windows 7, Windows Vista, and Windows XP. So if you're somebody who's trying to figure out, how do I learn about Windows XP if I'm not running Windows XP? How do I learn about Windows Vista if I'm not running Windows Vista? Well, you can download them, use them for lab purposes, use them for non-production purposes of Windows, which you are doing, and you'll have everything you need to be able to study for your A+ exam. Well, almost everything you'll need. You can't install Windows from this. This is an already installed version of Windows. Fortunately, the install process is relatively straightforward. If you watched my videos on installing Windows XP, installing Windows Vista, installing Windows 7, you have all the information you need to know about installing it. It's very useful to have these now. You can go to Windows XP and bring up the control panel and see what it looks like and see the differences. In fact, you could run all three of these at the same time on your computer as long as you had enough memory and enough disk space to be able to install them and run them all at the same time and do those comparisons. Where is it saving profile information? Where is it saving application data? These are things we have to know for the A+ exam. So I wanted to pass along to you some of those capabilities to have that available for your Windows XP. And that's this is where you can see all of these different ones. I wasn't even showing you as I was talking about them, but they're all there on this Windows machine. Really, really useful to have that there. Well, we've come to the end of the first hour. If you have been watching this live, I like to finish off the study group after an hour so that you can get your CEU credits. The second hour, I take your phone calls, and we just talk about anything, not really even specific to the A+. You're welcome to hang out. If you'd like to follow us, though, during the week, you can get our daily pop quiz and other things that I like to throw in there at ProfessorMesser.com/Twitter. You can follow my Twitter feed. This also, the YouTube stream, probably one of the most important things I can say. I'm not sure, I just sort of throw it in here at ProfessorMesser.com/YouTube, but the subscribers to the YouTube page, thank you so much. You always hear people say, please subscribe to my channel, please subscribe to my channel. And the reason people always say that is because it gets the eye of Google, of the folks in the YouTube section, and they do nice things for us on the back end to be able to work with their systems and be able to help support what we do here. So I encourage you that if you are watching the YouTube videos, you like one of the videos, give it a thumbs up. If you really like me, you'll subscribe to the channel. I don't spam out tons of new videos. If I have a new video, I'll do 1 or 2 a day, even if I upload 10 of them. Which I'm doing these days. I'm uploading 10 at a time. I won't spam you with those things, so don't worry about that piece. I just appreciate your support in being able to do that. I also have those reference guides, those quick reference guides, those study guides at ProfessorMesser.com/A+SG. Those might help you a lot and prepare you for the A+ exam. Again, the GTS Learning Freestyle Labs are there at a great price at ProfessorMesser.com/Freestyle Labs. And of course, I couldn't do this unless you showed up and we could have live questions and answers in the chat and people could make fun of me and the way that I look and the way that I talk. And am I rambling on yet? Yes, I am. All because I'm able to watch what you're telling me in the chat room. If you ever want to participate or see when the next one is, I tend to put things in there at least a week early, although this month I put the whole month in at one time. You can find out all about that at ProfessorMesser.com/calendar. And of course, thanks to you. Couldn't do it unless I got your questions, unless you showed up live to watch this, unless you were in the chat room talking and communicating and participating in all of those things. It's really been exciting things to be able to see this grow as we've done more and more of these. And it's a lot of fun to do on my side as well. Well, that brings us to the end of at least this first half of the A+ certification live study group. You're more than welcome to hang around for the second half, but if you can't, we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us. See you next time, everyone.